Today we are spoiled by Spider-Man games with 360-degree camera controls, open worlds, and fluid swing mechanics. But before the turn of the century, it was a simpler time, where side-scrolling platformers reigned supreme and millennials still had a semblance of joy in their lives. So let's take a look back, all the way back to 1990. Alright, maybe not that far back. The original Game Boy was released in North America in 1989, and over the next 5 years, 3 major Spider-Man titles were released for it. In this series, I will be playing every single Spider-Man game I can find and telling you if any of them are worth your time or just nostalgic shovelware. When I booted up the first game, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't have a lot of faith that these would be good, but I did account for the fact that these were exclusive to Game Boy releases. And with that, I went and checked out some forums where there were small communities that highly praised the game, not only for its gameplay, but its difficulty. And after the first stage, I don't know if I can agree with them. The first stage is nothing more than a walking simulator where you have to punch and jump every once in a while, where the only real nuisance are the reptile men clawing at your feet. That is, until you find out you can web swing all the way to the end of the stage if you want. You would really have to suck at video games to lose a life during this section. Mysterio is an incredibly easy first boss, probably considered an intro boss, because all you have to do is be smart enough to not stand in the smoke. See, an incredibly easy boss, and they give you full health for completing the mission, which makes it even easier. The next is a wall crawling section, which is really easy as long as you don't jump and kill yourself. And get a game over. Well, that's what the game over screen looks like. And let's try it again for good measure. Still didn't work. Well, I guess we're gonna keep trying. I really don't know what I was thinking here. I guess Oh, I figured it out. Alright. There we go. Not quite good enough, though. One thing I haven't explained is the power-up system, which I still don't quite understand. I'm not gonna lie to you. There are 3 different things that fall when you kill enemies. The little circle bubble, from what I understand, that only gives you points. I could be wrong. The little things that look like Wolverine claws, those are web cartridge refills. And lastly, but most importantly, are the little blocks that explode. Those give you your actual upgrades to your web shooters. By the end of the stage, you'll find out you need your web swinging abilities to get across the big gaps in buildings, and if you've wasted all your webs, then you're gonna die. Green Goblin isn't as straightforward until you find out you can stand in the corner and then kick him as he comes back out. Believe me when I say he is by far the easiest boss in the game. Until you understand it, the subway might be the most annoying part of this whole game. With the lizard men being replaced by actual men with guns shooting at your feet, and bats, I think what are bats, flying at you at every turn. It's a very annoying stage until you figure out that you can just crouch any of the bats flying overhead and then kick any of the bats that are below. Once you make it to the end of the subway and reach Scorpion, other than his little stinger, he doesn't really do anything, unless he just straight up falls on top of you. If you have webs, you're going to have a good time because you can just shoot him. If you don't have webs, you're just going to have to tank damage or pray that you're in the right section because he will hit you. So, as long as you have webs here, it's an easy time. This is the part of the game that they were talking about in those forums. This game gets incredibly hard in the second half. And you might be asking how, because you can just click continue, play again. Well, after a certain amount of times, it just sends you back to the title screen. And again, and well, you get it. You're going to see the title screen a lot more probably, unless I just cut it out. The fact is you have to be a lot more careful with your early game lives, making sure to just Try your best to never lose a life in those first 3 stages, just to have those extras in the back end, because you will be dying to Rhino and Doc Ock and the last villain, which I'll save. Now, there might have been some cool or smart way to beat Rhino, but I couldn't find it. In the long run, I just kicked him until he died. The ground kick is probably my favorite move in the game. Rooftops is a hellscape of birds and pitfalls, where one wrong move or your character just not wanting to jump high enough can be the end of your run. The stage's boss, Doc Ock, corners you at the end of a building, and you shoot a couple webs. It does a little bit of damage, and then he continues to one-shot you pretty much while he walks through you. After this, you really have to start to notice that you need, I know I said it earlier, but you need to save as many lives as you can for these later stages, because you're not going to have anywhere near the amount of practice on these stages. I know it shouldn't be, but out of all the times that I killed Doc Ock, this is probably the cleanest. It doesn't look the prettiest, because I literally jump off the ledge right here, but it is. I finally reached the final stage, and I am confronted by Big Head Small Body Venom. I just noticed the developers must have got lazy or something, because they just didn't title the last stage. It's the sewers, clearly, but there's no header like all the other stages. But maybe they just didn't expect children to get this far into the game? Oh, never mind, there it is. Holy shit. So this stage is putting all your skills together, whether dodging bullets from men that you can't attack because of how high they are, to you being slowed in the water. Anytime you're in the sewer water, you're at a crawl pace. You have to dodge what I'm guessing is poop coming out of the sewer, and also just alligators randomly spawn and attack you. I wouldn't say this stage is hard to get through, I would just say it's really annoying. The main issue with the final fight with Venom is you're out of lives. Unless you've played almost a perfect game, you are running on fumes by the time you make it to him. You have to make sure you have webs so you can shoot him from the other side. And you have to make sure you have lives. Just in some cases, when he shoots out his webs, you're not going to be able to dodge them. So you're going to take hits. That is, unless you find a way to cheese the last boss. Now, I found this out on accident, because I'm just bad, I guess. I kept accidentally turning, and as long as you input an attack facing away from him, he will stay on the one side. So you can keep him on the right side and keep attacking him. And that's the Amazing Spider-Man 1 for the Game Boy. Honestly, it looks horrible. It doesn't play great, to be honest. But it's the 90s. And after playing it for countless hours, I really liked it. And I immediately wished I was still playing it as soon as I booted up Spider-Man 2. I can only describe Amazing Spider-Man 2 as a puzzle game pretending to be an action game. The action part isn't hard. It's way easier than the first game. It really is just the fact that you didn't know you were playing a puzzle game. I can only imagine the hordes of children that fell victim on Christmas morning to opening this game and getting excited and never getting past the first stage. It's like you were stuck in this abyss of the town until you're like, well, I guess I'm not playing this anymore. Time to go back to whatever we were playing in 1992. Let me elaborate. There is Hobgoblin flying above dropping bombs, right? And you are just walking through this town. At the end of you can go into a couple of the buildings, but at the end of the road, there is an electric fence, and if you walk into it, you instantly die. So I can't damage Hobgoblin. I've tried. And I can't jump over the fence. I've also tried. So what else is there? Oh, and I should mention there are these items that you can pick up. Also, you run out of web very quickly, unless you find some, which I haven't found any yet. Here's the montage of me just kicking at Hobgoblin, praying that something would change. I'll speed it up for your convenience. I went to bed and said, hey, guess I'll figure it out on day 2. After trial and error that I won't put you through, I found out that you can web Hobgoblin's glider and drag him down to surface level. And then you beat him up and he's gone. He drops a key, which I'm guessing means that I have to find a door somewhere, which I thought I've been in every single building so far. That then I can find something to help me get past this gate. Like a man gone mad, I started testing jumping over the gate. In the long run, it was the hole in the wall. You walk through it, and it leads you to the left side of the town. You go in the first building. Up at the top, there's a can of oil. You walk all the way back to the fence, and you get on the glider and can fly now, I guess. This whole game really is about exploring and finding out what to do next. After I tried all the doors, and it seemed like I couldn't do anything, I fell in this hole, and started traversing a very large section of underground tunnels. I finally found an exit to a new section, and this guy showed up. I guess, from what I understand, he's Carnage, and he is unkillable. I also found out, just like the first game, after a certain amount of deaths, you have to start the game over. The nice thing about starting the game over with a game like this is now I know where everything is, and it takes almost no time to get back to where I was. I also got to do some really cool things, like find out if I swing on the glider the right way, I might even be able to jump over the fence and skip part of the stage. I made it back, and after I walked around in that section for long enough, I just guessed that I wasn't supposed to be there yet. So I did some backtracking and found out that you could push the lizard into a section of the tunnels, only to find out that you can't kill the lizard. I don't know why, but you can't kill him. I guess they don't want you to kill Dr. Connors. If you try hard enough, you can literally get him stuck right here, and you could punch him forever and he won't die. The important thing to understand is the Game Boy only has 2 buttons, A and B. Now, I've been lucky so far in that the oil was already in my inventory and selected whenever I tried to fly the glider. But what I didn't know is if you press the select button, it will switch the item that you are holding to something that I picked up way earlier in the game that kind of looked like a hamburger, but was actually a key card. And that key card will open a door, and the one right by the hole. After entering the door, you get a cutscene of Black Cat spewing exposition at you and explaining everything. So now I need to find an antidote, and then I use that on the lizard, and that's how we beat him. Compared to the rest of the game, this section is probably the most guided. There's these little crosshairs, and there's arrows pointing, and you have to make the crosshairs not shoot you, but blow up the things behind the arrows. Once you've done them all, you can collect the antidote. And then after battering him real good, you get Dr. Connors back. So he gives you the entry codes to the factory, which is some more backtracking. It's back a little bit farther than the last place we had to go. And then you just run through this building until you come to this boss room and beat this boss in 4 punches. The game is pretty linear from this point on. All you have to do is go back to the amusement park area where Carnage is, and then ride this crazy, weird roller coaster, I guess, to the top to where the last boss section is. Now, I said that like it was easy, but this is a long little ride, and you have to move yourself up on your web or move yourself down depending on what part of the ride you're on, and you fall off, and it's long, so you just have to keep doing it over and over again until you finally get it. So after a good 20 minutes or so of learning the route, even falling sometimes right at the end at this little section right here, I got in, and we get to pretty much very similar to the old Metroid game where you have to jump all the way to the top. After you make it to the roof, you pretty much web climb up into the blimp, and that's where you fight the final boss. Mysterio really is the only boss in this game that is a threat at all. Other than that, this has been a pure puzzle game and just exploration. So what happens is Mysterio creates clones of himself, and when his real self comes out, he starts shaking the blimp or something, and it hurts you if you don't hit the real Mysterio in time. But in the long run, that's all you have to do. and you've beaten Amazing Spider-Man 2. After two very different, but very enjoyable games in my opinion, I expected the third one to be the same. It wasn't. One thing I will give this game is it tried some batshit crazy stuff. Now I want to preface this, could be just an issue with the emulator, but when it tells you to kill 20 thugs, that's the first stage. It's just a basic kill mission. It tells you to kill 20 thugs, you kill the dudes that are like pulling out guns out of their trench coats, doesn't count. You kill the kids on skateboards with crowbars, it does count. So the game is just telling us that, you know, the real thugs are the children. At the beginning of stage 2, a xenomorph just comes out. They're gonna pretend and say that it's a spider slayer because it's Spider-Man versus the spider slayers, but that's bullshit. That is a fucking xenomorph. I also quickly noticed that half the time you get hit, you don't actually lose any life. Those big 4-bar things down at the bottom are your life, and just half the time when you get hurt, it just doesn't take away from it. So stage 3 is where I noticed that the game might have been a little too ambitious for what it was trying to do with a Game Boy game where you only have 2 buttons, showing you a scene where I have already kind of figured out how to climb the building, but it's not fun. It is a trek while a dragon robot thing, Eagle, is trying to kill you with rocks and blasters. And there's like these little spiders that come down and hit you. And if they hit you at the right time, you're gonna fall all the way back down to the beginning. And this is horrible, and I hate it. Once you finally reach the top, you jump up and get onto the big dragon bird monster. Once you accept that you're going to trade hits with it and just get up in its face and hit its head, it's not a hard kill. This game has a couple parts like this where the stage is just you falling and then the stage ends. Electro's just out here in the city with the cops and you have to, I guess, scare him inside to the electrical plant? That's what it is, I think. Either way, sooner or later if you punch him enough, he'll run inside the place and then that's where the actual Electro fight happens. This is another part where I just think that they didn't make the game enjoyable. That you have to, it's another climbing stage where if you don't jump at the perfect time right on the lip of the floor right before you can fall, you're gonna hit your head on the top of the next ceiling. You can web swing some, but it's really janky. Like half the time your webs won't connect. And the whole time there's Min, there's Electro, and there's this flying robot that comes down and shoots you. And if you're in mid swing or mid jump, you're back down at the bottom. And it's a pretty far climb up. You are timed. You have this 185-second timer. And half the time, it won't even be the fact that you're dying. It'll be the fact that you just ran out of time. It doesn't matter where the timer is, whether you've kept all your time safe this run, it drops down to 30 seconds and it just starts flashing. I don't know how bad this was on the Game Boy, but it is completely disoriented. After more failed attempts than I'd like to admit, I finally got to the top and made it to the next stage. Just kidding, I lied. I died at the very top. I was at the point where I paused the game, took a break, and really thought about if I was even going to finish the game. I decided to truck along and came to another one of those 7-second long transitional stages. At this point, I can only imagine that they were trying to like pad stage count or something. Like I get that if they were trying to do different scenes, that I guess they had to separate them, but it could have just been a white screen. You didn't have to get like a time bonus and a score for each of these scenes. Like the second game did it perfect when you just would go inside buildings. You didn't get a whole new stage every single time you went inside and outside of a building or switched to a different... There were no stages in the second game pretty much. The closest thing you consider a separate stage is when you got on the little goblin glider and flew to the next section because you couldn't get back to it. This stage was just more climbing with yet another flying obstacle that shoots things at you, like this whole game has been this whole time, and you just climb up these escalators and it's not hard, but you still have things shooting at you and it's annoying. I'm gonna let you guess what the next stage is. Spoiler alert. It's more climbing with another robot shooting at you. Luckily, this stage wasn't a climbing stage. It was another famously bad video game trope of the stage moving with you, and you can only go as fast as the stage does. The next stage, you actually get to fight a boss from Spider-Man's huge rogues gallery that they decided just to not use this whole game. Well, I guess you gotta fight Electro, but it didn't even feel like it because you were mostly dealing with other shit in that stage. This very calm, single one-on-one boss fight almost felt out of place in this chaotic mess that the whole rest of the game is, and it doesn't switch at this point in the game. And then this fucking thing comes around and attaches to my neck where I can't duck anymore. Finally find out you have to turn away and let Scorpion shoot it off himself. And we're back, but this time with actual big robot insects that we have to kill to get past this stage. There are 3 bugs, this one, a regular spider, and then I guess a Black Widow, that are all just waiting to knock you back to the beginning of the stage. Smythe took non-discriminatory labor laws to the next level and hired only disabled people. And Spider-Man's here to beat them up. The final boss is Smythe, and while he does take a lot of damage, you can just kind of get him into this corner and kick him to death. And that is the unceremonious end to, in my opinion, the worst of the 3 Game Boy games. I really have to read out the final things that Spider-Man says at the end of the game. He feels no triumph, no rush of victory. Only sickness at the near loss of life. And a bone-weary relief that at last it's all over. Like, was this game actually made for dudes going through their midlife crisis instead of children? I don't get it. Maybe I just didn't do it good enough and there's a good ending? But I don't think so. And that concludes the Game Boy saga. There is one other Game Boy game that has Spider-Man in it. It's X-Men and Spider-Man, and you only play Spider-Man at the beginning and then the end of the game. From what I understand, it's just notoriously hard too, so I'm just gonna skip it. So now on to the whole point of this video, where me, someone that has no credentials at all, no expertise in video games, is going to rank these arbitrarily on if I liked them or not. For being the first in the Game Boy franchise, I think The Amazing Spider-Man does hold the essence of what a Spider-Man game is the most. It doesn't try to do anything special, you just walk forward, beat enemies, and get to the end and fight a cool boss. But it also doesn't make it so easy for you that you pick it up, beat it, and then you're done in 20 minutes. That being said, after you beat the game, I don't ever see anyone probably picking this back up for fun. And with that, I think I'm gonna have to give it a good. Next up, with a very misleading cover art, because you sure as hell don't fight Carnage, you barely even see him, is Spider-Man 2. This game is funny, because I really thought I was going to hate this game. There was a long chunk of the game that I hated this game, because it does not hold your hand. It is not like Spider-Man games I have ever played, but I think it might be the best of these 3 games. The only reason I don't think I can put this in spectacular is the amount of people that probably gave up on this game before ever figuring out what to do. But just know it is teetering on that edge, and I for sure think it deserves a grade. If you like tedious platform climbing that's unintuitive, then this is your game. Yes, there are some cool, small little cool elements to this game, but overall, I can't stand this game. I hate it. There were multiple times that I was like, forget it, I'm not finishing it. It's Spider-Man 3 is a bad game. The invasion of the Spider Slayers, whatever it is, they sideline fun bosses. I don't care how many times you use these bosses, like Electro, Doc Ock, all those. They're fun to kill. They're fun to see. They're nice, cool bosses. Smythe is... I don't care what people say. Smythe sucks. I don't care about the Spider Slayers. The robots are so boring. But for me, I'm sending it where it belongs. It belongs in the trash. But I think that's it. I think these are the correct rankings for these 3 games as someone that's never played them before today. And please tell me in the comments how much you love Spider-Man 3. And how it actually does have really good level design, and that I'm just crazy. And please, 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 if you like this video, please subscribe and like and comment and whatever I will be making more Spider-Man videos. I've already started the Sega Spider-Man games. So hopefully I will see you in the next one.